Russian occupiers continue to storm Toretsk, but the southern and northern outskirts of the city with mines are still under the control of the Ukrainian Defense Force. The city has been practically wiped off the face of the earth by enemy cabs and artillery. Almost nothing remains of the city's buildings, except for basements in multi-story buildings and cellars in private homes, so the Russians find themselves in a fire bag. They are forced to sit in stone ruins under our aviation and artillery. You can't really use equipment here, since when stones and bricks hit the tracks, the machine loses speed and becomes easy prey for FPV drones. Reserve Colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Oleg Zhdanov spoke about this. By the way, drones are working at full capacity in Toretsk, the military expert noted. Thus, in the very residential areas of Toretsk, our troops are creating a real bloodbath for the Russian occupiers and inflicting quite significant damage on them. According to our military, the main problem for the Russians in Toretsk is the heavy drone bomber Vampire, which the enemy has nicknamed Baba Yaga. It is reusable and can operate around the clock, Zhdanov said. Our intelligence officers are looking for places where the occupiers are hiding and sending these drones there, which are capable of getting Putin soldiers out of their shelters. Russian forces in Toretsk use buildings and basements as cover, attempting assaults, but Ukrainian troops counter their advances daily. Yevhen Alkhimov, press officer at the 28th Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after the Knights of the Winter Campaign, stated that in the urban areas of Toretsk, there is no clear front line. Wherever the enemy manages to accumulate, they attempt to advance from there. The most intense fighting is currently taking place not in the city itself, in the industrial zone of the village of Krymske. The enemy tries to gather in buildings and then launch assaults. On January the 29th, the special battalion Shkval conducted a sweep in that area, driving out enemy forces. However, in urban environments, there is no defined front line. Wherever the occupying Russian forces manage to hide, whether in basements or other locations, they continue their attempts to advance. Alkhimov emphasized that the battles in urban areas are highly mobile, but Ukrainian forces repel the enemy daily, preventing further Russian advances.
Tulsi Gabbard, President Donald Trump's pick to be Director of National Intelligence, faced sharp criticism from Democrats and Republicans alike Thursday during a fiery confirmation hearing focused on her past comments sympathetic to Russia, a meeting with Syria's now-deposed leader and her past support for government leaker Edward Snowden. According to Associated Press, Gabbard started her hearing by telling lawmakers that big changes are needed to address years of failures of America's intelligence service. She said too often intelligence has been false or politicized, leading to wars, foreign policy failures and the misuse of espionage. And she said those lapses have continued as the U.S. faces renewed threats from Russia and China. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure and the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, Gabbard told the Senate Intelligence Committee. Gabbard, a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard who served 2 tours in the Middle East, has alarmed some intelligence and national security officials in the U.S. and elsewhere with comments sympathetic to Russia and government leaker Edward Snowden, as well as her past opposition to a critical surveillance program.
Thank you. Just as I suspect that some of my Democratic colleagues might criticize Ms. Gabbard's statements and actions since she saw the light and left the Democratic Party. But I sincerely hope that no one today will impugn Ms. Gabbard's patriotism and integrity.
And I appreciate that, and I want to thank Ms. Gabbard for meeting with me and having the candid conversation we did on the issues. Unfortunately,
I'll confess that those views may be somewhat unconventional, but look at where conventional thinking has got us. Maybe Washington could use a little more unconventional thinking. And I'm sure that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence could use more unconventional thinking. Ms. Gabbard, I submit that if confirmed, the measure of your success will largely depend on whether you can return the ODNI to its original size, scope, and mission.
I continue to have significant concerns about your judgment and your qualifications to meet the standards set by law. It also leads me to question whether you can develop the trust necessary to give our allies confidence that they can share their most sensitive intelligence with us. Make no mistake about it. If they stop sharing that intelligence, the United States will be less safe.
The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator.
Have you ever knowingly met with any members, leaders, or affiliates of Hezbollah?
No, and it is an absurd accusation. I went with former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who had been there many times before and who had met with Assad before. A number of topics were covered and discussed, and to directly answer your question, yes, I asked him tough questions about his own regime's actions, the use of chemical weapons and the brutal tactics that were being used against his own people.
In no way does Russia get a pass in either your mind or your heart, or in any policy recommendation you would make or not make.
Senator, I'm offended by the question because my sole focus, commitment, and responsibility is about our own nation, our own security, and the interests of the American people.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has worn our uniform
in
combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. It's up to all of us. We're the Senate. We get to decide whether we're going to confirm this nominee. Obviously, we didn't select this nominee. But can't we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today?